A handful of people have broken 60 on a PGA Tour event, but none compared to David Duval in 1999. That was one of those rare days where we can actually see some emotions from David Duval, who is notoriously known for keeping his level head, and he had no idea how the guy was playing. Here is his scorecard from that day, which included 11 birdies and 1 eagle with 0 bogeys. Looks kind of like my scorecard on PlayStation. The key thing is that he made over 100 feet of putts that entire day, including that final putt, which was a 6-footer, little snaker for eagle to win by 1. He started that day 7 shots behind at 26 under par, beating Steve Pate. So it got me thinking, what does his swing look like, and does it have to be so textbook? And it's a good idea for us to watch it, take a look at his golf swing, his cause and effect, and see. You would expect a robotic swing to hit all these points on my traditional lines, but we're going to take a look and see his cause and effect to show you that even he had an imperfect swing, but it was his swing, much like your swing. So stick with me, let's go find out, and don't forget, please hit that like, share, subscribe. It's all about this free education. David Duval on the screen now. You have to forgive the quality of this video. Apparently Ray Charles was videoing this, but we'll have to make do with this. But let's just take a look at our favorite Barney Purple and draw that lower plane line and also the upper plane line, and just for giggles, let's do the mellow yellow in spine angle line. Now the key thing to look at when you are working with your golf swing is you always want to draw where your plane lines are and your spine angle line, because you want to try to hold these throughout your golf swing. Most amateurs, including myself, even though I'm not an amateur, I'm just a range pro, we lose the spine angle. And if you could find a way to maintain your spine angle, you were one step closer to being next to Mr. David Duval on the tour. Well, not really, but you get my drift. So we're going to look at the way his body maintains its posture. Look at that. That is just so phenomenal. Not that many people can do this. And what I want you to look at is the amount of rotation he has right at impact. So not only is he increasing his shoulder tilting correctly, but the immense amount of rotation is what is very impressive about David Duval's swing. Now, in order to help him, you'll notice as he strikes the golf ball, look at his head. His head is already looking at the target. So for all of you out there who say you got to keep your head down, look at David Duval. He doesn't need to keep his head down. He's one of the best golfers that ever lived. Shoots 59 at the PGA Tour event, so you can raise your head. The key thing is not about your head. It's your spine angle. So he can keep his head down or he can raise it up. He can look up at Elon Musk's satellites for all I care at this point, as long as your spine angle remains on that line, and which he does fantastically. So what we can do is also look at the amount of shoulder tilt increase he is generating. So let's do this in red. We need a new red name, so we got to get a red name. Anybody watching this, come up with a red name, we'll use it. And let's go to the top of the swing and we'll see the amount of shoulder tilt. So he increases it about 18 degrees, which is about normal. You're looking at 15 to 20 degrees for the tour players. Now with the driver, you can see a little bit more just because you're trying to swing more up because it's floating on a tee. But most of us, we want to be at 15 to 20 degrees, and this should happen naturally if you can maintain your posture, which means staying against that back brace line, which is this blue line right there. And I got the wrong tool for me to use, and I don't know what happened with my arrows. My arrows just disappeared. So that is the back brace line. So my computer glitched out on me. I had to redraw the lines, but let's just take a look at the posture. Now, posture is a big thing. The key thing that we have here is his arms do hang naturally. Now, what naturally down? Now, what could affect this is how far you are from the golf ball. Now, standing further and closer does come with positives and negatives. There are no universal ways to figure out how to stand. You would like, however you stand, for your arms to remain in a natural, free-flowing position and not outstretched or inside, because that starts to mess with your weight balance and your shifting. But the key thing too to look at is, let's draw this in red, is you want to go from the arches of the heels straight up to the sky, and we can see that David Duval is slightly heel based, and that means that with a low plane line, the spine angle meet is sitting slightly back. So it's pretty close to centered, close enough for government work. And the key thing here is when we take that club back, you can see if this wasn't recorded with a potato, you could see that club head going right in between his hands. So this is the key thing. David did not necessarily have a wider takeaway, as I see some instructors instructing. His right arm broke pretty soon, and that allowed him to get that right arm to tuck under. And the key thing with David Duval at this point is he just stayed below his secondary plane line. But if we take a look how deep that club is, it is not necessarily as deep as we have seen others. Now, what can help deepen your club is more rotation. So we see the hip turn is not a lot with David. If it was a little bit further, his hands would get deeper, but that would also change from the top position to impact. It would change his motion, and that would not work for David Duval. So does it necessarily have to get deep enough? Not necessarily, because it all comes down to your triangle check. So let's get our triangle check, and we're going to do this in orange. Since we haven't used orange in a while, we might actually call this Trump orange. How do you like that one? So let's draw where the hands go straight down. Now let's keep an eye on this. So in relative terms, we can see that that club head is slightly laid off to his turning and his arm position, and that's okay because it works for him. Watch as he drops his club down. So you see that club initially stays on that line, but then immediately it breaks over to the right side. Now this could be matching up that slightly laid off position. So if you slightly lay it off, you have to rotate to move this club from being a slight laid off position to get a little bit steeper. Now remember, you want it to be slightly steeper with the irons. So let's continue this, and right there we see that club is now right in the middle of those two plane lines, which is pretty good. And from this point on, we see a true connection turn. This is one of the few people that I can remember seeing where from this point on, he basically holds that wrist angle, and all he will do is turn with his entire body. Most of us, if we do this, we start blocking that golf ball. We start interfering Mrs. Havenkamp's bridge game on her patio on the 15th hole, 2 houses over, because we've lost that ball to the right. But watch this. Look at that rotation and tilting at the same time. So this is what made Duval's swing very unique. It is not a usual thing to occur, but he is able to time it, and I believe this occurred because he was slightly laid off and he had to get an extra rotation to get that club to steepen out and get back on that lower plane line. And as you can see, when he releases it, that club exits look very low. You can see how low that club exits. It's on that lower plane line. So this is probably one of the first people for the modern day era to exit low and left, and that increased his turn. And we see because of that extra turn at impact, that gets him on that lower plane line much quicker. If you tilt more, your hands are going to exit up to here. If you turn more, your hands are going to exit lower. And what are they trying to teach you today is to get that club handle to exit lower, because that promotes turn. So if you're suffering with some turn, think about the handle exiting lower, and the only way to do that is by turning. But again, I wouldn't go ahead and try and do this unless you are working with a local PGA professional. Okay, so from the face on, we've got David Duval with a driver. This is a newer video. I'm not sure exactly the year, but look at that shaft lean back already. So this is trying to set him up to swing more up. Just remember your circles. So because we're using our Barney purple, if we draw this circle here, he is trying to visualize hitting up on this ball. So you can see already this setup. If he stays in that position, this golf ball will be struck up. And we're going to leave that circle there and that spine angle to show how he will maybe increase or decrease the circle, just depending. Some of us will compensate either way, but the goal is obviously to swing more up. So we'll leave that right brace line to see any lateral shift. I don't think there's going to be much lateral shift because he's already so far on the right side. If you do the center of his chest down to the golf ball, you will see how much his center is behind the ball, which is great. But if you take a look at the tilting is matching to the center of the chest and the golf ball. And this is something I preach to every amateur, is to set up this way. If the best in the world do it, most of the best in the world do this, and they are very good at striking the golf ball because it simplifies your motion. You don't have to reconnect two angles in the golf swing. The angles stay about the same, so there's less moving parts for the average Joes out there. But the first move back, we can see that we don't have that move to the right because it was so heavily set up on the right side. At the top of the swing, we're still in our spine angles, so we're still matching Barney purple, and you can see how much that club goes back. Now, does that club go back because of turn? Not necessarily. The hips are turned adequately, the shoulders are turned slightly past 90, so the club does veer further back. So there is some disconnection on the way back, but but this is one of the best in the world, and he reconnects beautifully. One of the ways he reconnects, as we saw with the iron, is he's able to turn so much, he gets out ahead of his hands, and his hands at the very end go ahead and release the club. Where most of us are not able to turn and tilt that much, so we reconnect with our hands and arms, and that's where we lose the angle, we get the chicken wing, and our ball position is probably way off. But let's just take a look at this first move, and in mellow yellow, let's just put that impact line, and we'll probably see the hips go right towards that impact line. Look at that. So the hips go right on that impact line, and we start to see the head raising slightly. The face is pointing this way as he strikes that golf ball. Now we see the face is pointing this way. So to help him turn and increase his tilt, he felt like his whole head had to move with the turn to allow him to get in that position. You try it too. If you start keeping your head here, it's going to limit your turn. If you just do this, it helps you turn more. So if you are struggling with turn, give that a try. It might help you out. But what we're going to do is back up one frame, and let's take a look at the difference between the shoulder tilt and his new line. So we're going to draw the new spine angle line in green, and we can see it's slightly shifted forward, so that's good. That means the weight went into the golf ball. And we're going to draw a new circle to see that new circle where it is pointing, and we can see that versus the spine angle, he is swinging more up. So he started with an up swing setup, and he's actually hitting more up while driving left. So if we reconnect where his ball position is now, we can see it's not so far off his center. His center has caught up to that golf ball, but it hasn't gone anywhere near it. So this is making sure that he is still swinging on the upswing, and as he strikes it, we can see those hands are beautifully connected in that center of the chest, and they stay connected pretty well. You can see the whole body is turning. He doesn't really break away from connection even well past here. The hands are still connected to that center of the chest, and as he comes on through, we finish in again that backwards spine angle. So if you want to learn how to hit the golf ball up, you've got to maintain your backwards spine angle, meaning you set up, if you're righty, you set up with more of your weight to the right side, you turn and tilt on the right side, you strike the golf ball on the right side. Now you can move a little bit left to right to help your weight distribution, just depending on what your abilities are, but don't go ahead and make these changes willy-nilly. You've got to go work with the PGA coach near your area. Hope that helps you guys. I'll see you next time, and you're well on your way to shooting 59 front nine fairways and green.